What is up, football fans? I am Danny Austin here at the Nation Network studios in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And this is the Live from the 55 podcast. Before we get going, just wanted to quickly shout out our sponsor, Fraser and Fig. No joke. These guys are kind of unbelievable. You get ready to go cheese and charcuterie boxes curated with local and artisanal ingredients. They got 4 sizes for every occasion. All boxes have meat, cheese, dried fruit, fresh fruit, nuts, olives, pickles, carrots, and their selections kind of change. They vary month to month. So this is a cool spot, man. This is something worth checking out. I did not know that I was in the charcuterie market, and then impressed some friends with one of these recently. So definitely worth checking out. Thank you to Fraser and Fig. Beyond that, here we go. Week 2 of the CFL season in the books. A weirder week in the sense that I think that if you had looked at the 3 games that have happened so far, we were recording before Hamilton and Toronto played. But if you looked at Calgary, Ottawa, Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, and then Edmonton, BC, I think you would have picked the 3 winners relatively easily. Here, I think we're quickly seeing right now that the 2 best teams in the league so far, and possibly going forward, are the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the BC Lions, a team that I think a lot of people did not have picked to sort of be in that top 2. I know that I speak with Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press on Rob Kerr's show about a month ago, and we both had the Calgary Stampeders as number 2. And right now, I don't think that you can make a compelling argument having them against a BC Lions team that, first of all, beat Calgary in week 1, and then second of all, absolutely decimated the Edmonton Elks 22-0. I think that's something we're going to be talking with our guest, John Bender, about a little bit, but I just thought Edmonton was going to be better than this so far. Getting shut out in week 2, deeply concerning. I know there's going to be a lot of conversation around the league about what they should do at quarterback, and I think that that's probably pretty valid. And you sort of look at a guy like Dane Evans, you wonder if there's anything out there that might sort of instantly and dramatically improve this team. But 22-0, that's no good for anybody. Beyond that, I mean, Winnipeg lay a beating on the Saskatchewan Roughriders, 45-27. Winnipeg just hasn't lost a step. They look like the exact same team. We've been waiting. I mean, honestly, I feel now for 2 seasons, possibly 3, for this team to hit that wall. They've got some guys in their 30s in pretty key positions, but they're not falling off. They look every bit as dominant as they have over the past couple seasons. Winners of 2 of the last 3 Grey Cups, obviously, but they're just better than that. And it's right now. Again, I've made this argument. If I was the league, I would be promoting it's everybody trying to knock off the Bombers. That would be, my TSN ads. That would be everything. Because, when Dalton shown, not that I think there was any real concern, but, week 1 maybe didn't put up quite the same numbers as he did in his rookie season. And then last year comes out, I'm looking at it right now. It's 8 receptions for 145 yards and a touchdown. It's just insane. But there's no holes on that team. And they all buy into the system, and they all play so well. So here we are in week 2, and just like we did in 2021, just like we did in 2022, it just seems like they're pretty far ahead of the pack. So I think that's your number 1, 2, and sort of everyone else. We don't know what Toronto's going to look like because they still haven't played, despite 7 CFL games having been played this season. But they've got Hamilton this evening, and we'll see what they look like. But beyond that, I don't think we can name a clear number 3. Calgary, I do think bounced back nicely in general against the Ottawa Red Blacks. Like 26-15 over the Red Blacks. There were some touch and go moments there. I know that the Stampeders weren't happy with sort of the way their first half ended, and they kind of gave them a shot to get back into it. But you look at this defense, and I thought they played pretty exceptionally. The only touchdown that the Red Blacks scored, really, they had great field position. There's not much you can do in that spot. So I liked what I saw from the Calgary defense. And then you're looking at an offense that I was quite concerned about. I will be honest with you, coming out of week 1, I didn't like the way that they used Reggie Begelton, who I just think is the key to everything they do. We saw Kadeem Carey go down. If I'm being honest, that wasn't a huge concern because I just have so much faith in both Diedrich Mills and Peyton Logan. Malik Henry didn't fully look like himself, and Jake Mayer looked off, and to be honest, pretty much everywhere there. I love the way they used Begelton against the Red Blacks. He was the downfield weapon that sort of I've wanted to see for a while now. I thought Malik Henry looked much better. Trey Odom's Dukes, honestly, I mean, had 51 yards receiving, but could have had a lot more if Jake Mayer had hit him over the middle late in the game. The ball was just sort of underthrown and didn't catch him, but that might have been a 100-yard game for Odom's Dukes. And I, by and large, think Jake Mayer did look better. There's focus on Jake Mayer's performance right now. That just means he's sort of under the microscope week in, week out. And I don't know that he played at sort of an MOP level on Thursday against the Red Blacks, but I do think ultimately this is a team that is focused on improving. And they said that from the start. They're not going to be the team in week 9 that they were in week 1. They're not going to be the team in week 2 that they were in week 1. So the question is, did they show improvement? And yes, it came against a Red Blacks team that honestly doesn't seem to have their quarterback situation quite sorted out. That, has a lot of losses over the last couple of years. But you can only beat what's in front of you. And I do think that they showed improvement in the areas that I was concerned about, with sort of the notable exception of the defensive ends, who I don't think are getting enough pressure on opposing quarterbacks. But that's something we will talk with my guest, Jonathan Bender. So I don't know if we call him Jonathan Bender. John Bender. I apologize for that, John. I've never called you Jonathan before. Jonathan Bender was an Indiana Pacers player in the mid-2000s. He was actually, I believe, drafted by the Toronto Raptors and then flipped for the rights to Anthony Davis by the Raptors back in the day. So I apologize for mistaking our offensive lineman with a mid-2000s basketball player. All right, here we go. John Bender. I don't even know how to introduce you. I think anyone in the Calgary football community knows you well, obviously from your time with the Stampeders, and then you're still a pretty big part of the football community at this point. You offered me one of the tickets to the Fan Fest back in April.
Yeah, that's right.
And you are still a season ticket holder. You still do work with the team at times, don't you?
I just do like the alumni stuff. I don't do anything, that's per se, like I'm not an employee of the Stampeders or anything by any means. But I like being involved in the football community was a big part of my, career and where I am now. And if I can, do some media, do some things like that to help out, that's great.
100%. I mean, I intend on leaning on you a fair bit as I get this podcast going. You've also, briefly, I think you're going to wear the hat out, but have contributed. We're trying to get the set going here. We got a CFLPA helmet that we've added. We got John Bender's Stamps hat, and then we have a bobblehead of Andrew Harris, but the arm has fallen off. So people on the podcast can't see it, but we're just going to slide the arm behind there so that you can kind of see Andrew Harris, but not focus.
This is a little behind the scenes stuff. I like it.
I like bringing the audience in. It's what I try to do. We watched the Stamps and Red Blacks game sort of together, borderline together, because I had to work during it. But we were at tables adjacent to one another, and I do want to get to that game. But gonna lead off because I know you watch them all. Is Winnipeg further ahead now than they have been in recent seasons?
They're certainly at a point where they're playing at a high level, that's for sure. And I've been really impressed with what they've been able to do. And what they have there is a lot of continuity, right? So when you have that much continuity and you're playing a lot of guys that have played together for a long, long time, this is what we see. We see the first few weeks of the season and they kind of hit the ground running. And teams like the Stampeders that are trying to replace some big pieces, some other teams that needed to replace some big pieces because they weren't getting the job done, are having a hard time, right? And the Blue Bombers, we're all waiting for them to do what the Stampeders did kind of 3-4 years ago, just eventually kind of age out and that core ages and then they're no longer the core that they once were. And I thought it might have been last year, and now we're hoping it might be this year. As Stampeders fans, it might be a few years out. We're going to have to find out here.
So it's interesting because I think John Hufnagel and the Stampeders get a lot of credit for sort of selling high on guys like in their 30s, a year or two before they kind of drop off. But like the Bombers presented a different path, right? Which is just hang on with, if you know your core can win, just keep them together for as long as you can and take the wins.
Yeah, look no further than Stanley Bryan. He played with the Stampeders for a few years and won a Grey Cup with them in 2014. And at that point in time, he was getting to his late 20s. The Stampeders don't love paying those guys a whole ton of money, especially when they want a contract that rolls into their 30s. Now he's in his late 30s, still playing at a high level. I think he's a 4-time most outstanding lineman, and he's going to be a future Hall of Famer, and he's got a lot of Grey Cup rings now. So, that's just one example, and there's lots of players I think that we can look at with the Blue Bombers organization that have, kind of defied, beat Father Time for the time being and, have been able to play at a high level for a long time.
I guess that's the thing, right? Is I know that they're hosting the Grey Cup 2024, right? Or is it 2025? I should probably check that.
I believe it's 2025. I think 2024 is BC.
It's BC, fair.
It might be vice versa.
So, that'll be interesting. If they can keep this group together until then, there'll be that would be a pretty amazing run, first of all, and then secondly, like having that game with this group would be. I mean, that's the stuff dreams are made of if you're the CFL.
For sure.
Did you see anything from the Riders that made you think they're around in the corner?
I mean, the quarterback play was at a high level. I mean, you saw Trevor Harris go out there and throw the ball around, like 400 plus yards and 3 touchdowns. To do that as a quarterback and still lose by, multiple touchdowns is tough. So, I mean, they're going to have to do a lot more on defense. It looks like that offense can move the ball around. I like their Canadian wide receivers there. They got some rookies that have been stepping up. They had that rookie Canadian wide receiver, Emilis, who came up with 3 touchdowns. And, Juwan Breskison's still there. And they got some other guys who can play at a high level. And Trevor Harris, I mean, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. The Rough Riders have been hoping to find some better quarterback play. I know that last year they had a tough time, but they also gave up 70 sacks. So you can protect your quarterback. Hopefully you can find some great quarterback play, and that's kind of going the right direction.
Yeah, like Trevor Harris is one of those guys who, I'll be honest, I was talking to Jeff Hamilton a few weeks ago. I referenced this in the intro, but both of us were just sort of like, oh, well, Trevor Harris gets you to a certain point, but he's not elite. And I think that like looking at him, I think that's a little unfair to him. I think that, you put him on, you give him receivers. We saw Sean Bain sort of go off, former Calgary Stampeder. Like, I think that I owe Trevor Harris, not an apology, but like a little more respect than I've been given.
Yeah, I think at any level of football, I think quarterbacks always get too much credit when things go well, and they get blamed too much when things go wrong. Obviously, they're the guy with the ball in the hand most of the time, so they're the ones that everyone has eyes on. But, I mean, you look at various teams throughout, college, NFL, CFL. There's teams that get to the championship games that don't have a game-breaker quarterback. They have a quarterback that manages, he's a game manager, doesn't create turnovers. And when there's opportunities to take the top off the defense, they'll go there. But, I think that Trevor Harris, if he has some great players around him, I mean, hopefully he can play at a higher level and get things going. But I would agree with you that he's not a game changer elite. I don't know how many most outstanding players he's going to win in the CFL, but if they have an opportunity to, great defense, great run game, they could go somewhere.
Well, and that's the thing is like looking at it right now, we have no idea really what's happening. I have no idea what's happening in the East. Like, Ottawa, I don't think is very good, and then we haven't even seen Toronto. But I do suspect that there will be a crossover this year. If I'm being honest, it's way too early to say that, and I may eat those words. But I don't know. I mean, I will say, I don't think Edmonton's going anywhere right now. What happened there?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I thought it was interesting, even in the offseason, when you have, the Edmonton Elks have really struggled here. They haven't won a home game in 2 years. Everyone knows now 2 years of one game, and I was stunned last year when I heard that they extended Taylor Cornelius. Because, I mean, nothing says extension like not winning at home for 2 seasons, right? Like, I don't understand it. Like, I mean, if I was the Elks organization, I'd go every direction I can, searching for great quarterbacks and great quarterback play, finding another established veteran in the CFL. I know they got Trey Ford there that they are expecting big things from in the future, but might be Trey Ford time sooner rather than later if this keeps up.
And that's the thing. It's like, what are they like expecting from Trey Ford is, I think, the big question there. Like, there aren't many guys who have taken his path who have really excelled. But I know, I mean, coming out of that draft in particular, and he's one of those guys who I feel like last year got in, looked good for basically a drive against the Stampeders, and then we haven't talked about or heard from really in the year since. But people were excited about him. It's just whether that excitement can translate into a year one success, or whether there's going to be growing pains that are going to sort of extend this horrid spell for the Elks.
Yeah, I mean, they got great. I mean, they spent all that money on the wide receivers in the offseason. They brought in a lot of talent. Now they got to get somebody to get them the football. So whether that's Trey Ford, whether that's a trade, whether that's an acquisition from another place, or to find out, or else it's going to be another long season in Edmonton. And I don't know how the situation will go there if they don't win for another season. So they got to get things going the right direction.
Is there anything that suggests to you, like, when the quarterback play is what it is? And I don't want to put it all on the quarterback. I mean, they lost 22-0. But is there anything that makes you encouraged?
I mean, the wide receivers are really talented. I mean, they've got, maybe the best wide receiver in the CFL, and a guy like Geno Lewis. But they got to get them the ball, and the offensive line's got to play a little better. They got to do the things there. But I think the biggest thing is it's going to become Trey Ford time here soon, and you got to see what you got. And if that's giving Trey Ford a 3-4 game spell here to see how things go, And if it doesn't work out, and maybe you go back to Cornelius, maybe you see what the cost for Nick Arbuckle is after Jeremiah Masoli's healthy. Maybe you start shopping around the CFL and see what you can find.
You think Dane Evans would be available?
Potentially. Yeah, could be something to look at.
Like he's sort of the obvious candidate, in my opinion, for like if you are looking for someone to come in and give you starter reps. I know that last year was up and down, but he can do it. He's played at a high level in this league.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as the season progresses, we're going to see teams that kind of fall out here, or they run into cap problems, or they need to make some switches, some trades. So yeah, things are going to, the season's going to progress. Something's going to happen, but could be Dane Evans. It could be, maybe it ends up being a guy like Jeremiah Masoli. Maybe they see Arbuckle has a couple good games here, and all of a sudden Masoli's available. But yeah, we'll see what happens and see how it plays out.
Yeah. Brandon Adams, man, this is a good news story. Like this is one of the great stories in the CFL right now. I mean, I think that a lot of us, myself included, I was questioning that decision to sort of roll with him as the starter. But I don't know, through 2 games, the Lions, he looks pretty good running that offense. Looks confident.
Big play VA is back.
Yeah.
Eh? So yeah, he's been playing great. I mean, he's been an electric quarterback for a long time, whether it's through college, whether it's in the CFL. The knock on him is always he gets banged up because he's not that big, he's not that heavy, and he can get nicked up. But if they protected the quarterback like they did against the Calgary Stampeders and nobody got anywhere near him, you saw what he could do. And we saw, him put up big numbers in a hurry. I mean, the Stampeders saw that last year when he came in here with Montreal too. And I mean, he's a guy that plays really well out the gate early in the season. It's can he get through 18 games? Can he get to the later half of the season and continue to play at a high level?
He is one of those guys, like legitimately, who I feel like plays better against the Stampeders than against any other team. Like I don't know how to quantify that. Like to be fair, we can't find any CFL stats, so it's basically impossible. Although I did get a call, I got an apology from the CFL for that. They did call me and say, like, look, we know how much worse this is making your job, and I appreciated that. And yeah, I don't think it's anyone at the head office's fault, but like honestly, like I do. There's no way to quantify it, but I do think that he's one of those guys who somehow just gives the Stampeders trouble. But I don't know. He gave the Elks a lot of trouble. I hear you, and I'm sort of saving any questions about the Stampeders for when we get there because I know that's where we're going to dig in. But like, I get that until we see Toronto play and maybe Hamilton, what isn't as bad as they looked against Winnipeg. But like the Lions, quite clearly, I mean, they look like a good professional football team that does the details right. And that has me currently, and I know teams get better, but after week 2 or 3/4 of week 2, like they're clearly the second best team in the league to me.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to argue that right now. I think they are as well. They're an organization top to bottom in the last 2-3 years that has just turned everything around. Whether it's from fan base to obviously they changed the ownership. Fan base seems like they're starting to come back. They're getting big turnouts. And now the play, from last year with Nathan Rourke kind of lit the CFL on fire all summer and put up some big stats, some stats we haven't seen in a long time. And now, Vernon Adams has been able to step in there. And I mean, he's not quite the same player, but he's played at a high level as well. And I mean, he's been as good a CFL quarterback as you could ask for at the gate.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something about Vernon because he played at Oregon, right? He was mostly at Oregon.
Yeah. So he I believe he transferred late, played Oregon his last season.
Okay. Well, there's something about him being in the Pacific Northwest that I like. And as you said, like I think
he likes it there too.
Yeah, I think he does. But it was cool, honestly, seeing yesterday. Like, and it's clearly the recipe is like have LL Cool J there. Like I do. The Lions deserve so much credit, and it is something that well, I feel like the Stampeders are making steps in the right direction. It's hard not to look at that, like the money that's being spent on marketing and bringing people in, and sort of wonder what would happen if we got that a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean, their owner is giving interviews almost weekly.
Yeah.
Like it's something you just don't see in the CFL or in any professional league for that matter, is the owner getting in front of the mic regularly with local media and saying, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we're trying to do. This is what direction we're trying to go. And I mean, they could hire someone to be that face of the business operations or face of whatever they want. And, he's trying to take that on himself with, done a great job. And, I mean, if it shows how much he cares, I mean, I think that the people, in and around, Vancouver area will be able to hop on board as well.
And I do want to just quickly, I mean, we were there. I'm not trying to, there's no knock on Jay McNeil, who I think is doing a pretty tremendous job so far. I mean, I thought that we were at the Fan Fest, not the Fan Fest, what was it called? The thing that we went
It's
to?
like the
Fan
preseason
forum.
fan forum for season ticket holders.
Yeah. And I was blown away, man. And like I was in the Stamps house prior to week 1. Like you may not see it if you just kind of get your ticket and show up and sit in the stands and walk through the concourse, but there are things happening around McMahon Stadium that are encouraging to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Stampeders have done a great job building up the premium experiences over the last 5 years. And whether that's, from the Red and White Club that's now Stamps House, whether that's the Talus patio that you can sit down there and watch the game, do corporate things. They have those suites. They have, lots of different things that you can do on game day to kind of improve the game day experience. Now what they need to do is fill out the corners of that stadium because get a few more season ticket holders back or find some new ones. So, as I always kind of have this theory that, 20,000 or less for attendance I would consider poor attendance. 20,000 to 24, I'd say is decent. 24 plus, I'd call good. And 28 plus, I'd call great.
Yeah, 27 is the magic number for me. Like I still find, Labor Day when you get 30 is obviously it's magical, but like at 27, that stadium doesn't feel half empty. It's always loud. It's got a good vibe.
It's got a good buzz going. And as a player, I can tell you, I wasn't in play for a long time, but I played in some big stadiums, especially when I was in college and then in the CFL as well. And just as a player, you get that little buzz going in the crowd when you come out there on game day, and it's a whole different level. It's a whole different energy level, and everybody gets amped up.
Yeah. And I don't know. I'm hoping, to be honest, given the headlines coming out of week 1 at McMahon about the crowd size, which I think it was overstated. And yes, we want more than 18,000 people there, but I think it was the earliest game in CFL history. It was on a Thursday. It was on a school night. There were a lot of reasons why that crowd wasn't huge, and the Lions don't tend to draw here. I'm expecting a decent crowd with the Riders in town next weekend, and it's important.
Yeah, I think every year since I've been a season ticket holder, the Thursday night game is always the worst attendance of the season, and it's often just on the other side of 20,000, just over 20. But we're going to get the Saskatchewan Rough Riders in here, and what everybody's been asking for, the Rough Riders in the summer.
Yeah.
Saturday night, 5 p.m. So no excuses here. Let's see how the fans turn out. And from everybody I'm talking to, it sounds like they're expecting a big attendance, and I hope that we get that 25,000 plus or even 30 plus would be great.
That'd be awesome. That'd be amazing. And it would be a nice sort of, I don't know what the term is, but there are certain outlets that jumped in and haven't done a Stampeder story in years and sort of did the attendance is terrible. And it would be nice for the Stampeders to be able to sort of say, hey guys, like we're worth covering for other reasons other than our attendance is occasionally bad.
Hey, people love to run those negative articles, man. They love to pile on.
I know. I did not do one of those. Let's shift to Stampeders and Red Blacks. And honestly, for me, it was not a perfect game. I don't think anyone would pretend that was a perfect game. But the areas that I wanted to see improvements, Jake's play, the way that they were using the receivers, the offensive line, I thought there was a lot to like.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest thing I wanted to see was in the early season game against the Lions, it felt like Jake Mayer never really went downfield. It felt like we were stuck into the 5 to 8 yard completions. Hope somebody breaks a tackle. Hope somebody makes a play. Oh, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to turn the ball over. It seemed like it was that quarterback. I call it a quarterback that's afraid. It's not ready to take a step downfield, not ready to tail out the deep ball. And maybe that was the game plan. Maybe that was the design. Maybe they hadn't got through,
he only played a little bit in preseason at all. I think it's somewhat understandable. You would know better than I would. You have played at the highest level, but it was incredibly discouraging. Well, also you're thinking, okay, this is a guy really in his second year starting. Didn't get much time in. I can understand.
100%.
Yeah, but yeah,
there lots of few days of training camp with the smoke and everything else, and there's lots of external factors here. But I wanted to see a mid-season Jake when the season started, but we didn't quite get that. And when we got to game 2, I saw him push the ball downfield a bit more. Looked like he had a little bit more accuracy on his passes. Looked like he was able to take the top off the defense at times, and that's going to be huge, especially in the CFL, a pass-heavy league. And with the team that's probably going to have, if not the best run game in the CFL, a top-tier run game. So if they're able to, do some different things on offense, seems like him and Trey Odom Dukes are showing a lot of early season chemistry.
Yep.
And if they can establish that and get the ball going downfield, I think that, they're going to score a lot more points. And I think that defense, they didn't look mid-season form out the gate either. And if they can get things going, there's some building to do here. When you replace a lot of players in key spots, Stampeders have, replaced Derek Dennis. There's, their nominee for most outstanding lineman last year.
Mhm.
Sean Lemon, who was, all-star on the D line as well.
And Oramawade, who probably should have been an all-star, right?
Totally.
So I mean, I don't know if I can say that, but it was an exceptional high-end.
He's now the highest paid D lineman in the CFL, so somebody likes him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's a few talented positions there they had to move around, and I'd imagine when they do that, they had some different leadership changes on the team too, and some changing of the guard from guys that weren't from some of those guys I mentioned before that now are stepping into more leadership roles, more senior roles in the team, and I mean, there's going to be some bumps there along the way too. So, I mean, I think that we saw that play out a little bit in week 1. Week 2, I mean, everybody thought the Stampeders were going to be able to beat the Red Blacks. Yeah, it wasn't perfect. Yeah, it wasn't the best game I've ever seen, but I saw steps in the right direction, and I saw a nice football win, and I think that that's what we wanted.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a million things that I want to get to. I'm going to start. We're going to go back to Jake a little bit later, but I think the offensive line was a concern after week 1. Now, Zach Williams wasn't playing. It seems like they're pretty high on this Caleb Benenoch guy who was at right tackle. But I haven't had any. I didn't have any issues with the O-line. There was really only one sack, and that's a pretty formidable Red Blacks defensive line. I mean, they have the reigning most outstanding defensive player. I thought they did pretty well against the Red Blacks.
Yeah, they were great. I thought that Jake had lots of time. I thought that he was in the pocket. He was looking through some reads when he needed to. I thought that the interior of the Stampeders offensive line is all Canadian. 3 interior Canadian O linemen, all maybe the highest paid at their position in the CFL or close to. So they've got some,
people don't realize when they ask.
They have some very, very talented players there between Ryan Sevier,
Zach Williams, who took 2 penalties, but it was his first game and he missed a big part of camp. His timing just wasn't quite there. He was great otherwise.
And Sean McEwen, who played at a high level with the Argos, and oh, by the way, came back to Calgary to come home to sign with his hometown team, which I think doesn't get talked about enough. So he could have gone to probably any team in the CFL and got top dollar and came home. I mean, that's a great story that I think needs to be told a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, those are as good a CFL offensive linemen you're going to find. They're all in their late 20s. They're all playing at a high level. And now you just got to find 2 American tackles to play right tackle and left tackle around them. And for anyone that doesn't know, the way a CFL training camp works is they bring in about 8 offensive tackles, some large humans from the SEC, big conferences, wherever. A lot of the guys played at a high level. They were, all conference players in the Big 12, the SEC, whatever it is. And they fight it out for those top spots. And, this is what we see and what we're at now. And the right tackle and the left tackle, the Stampeders are going to have to sort things out. It sounds like Hugh Thornton and Caleb Benenoch are going to be some players that, here in the future are going to be maybe some mainstays. And if they're not, they're going to get some new guys in camp soon or into the locker room and try to find some guys there that can play.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line, doing that is always interesting to me because I do feel like what we always hear about the NFL is there's never enough offensive linemen. So it does feel like for a CFL team, it's got to be arguably the hardest position to recruit because when the NFL is desperate for guys, CFL, I imagine you're not always getting that elite talent.
Yeah, I think there's another story that needs to be told is that often the CFL offensive line will dress 6, sometimes 7 players. So when one player gets hurt, often they dress 3 quarterbacks. So, Jake Mara goes down. We have another guy who plays quarterback that steps in. When you have an offensive lineman that goes down to tackle, well, now sometimes the guard kicks out to tackle. That's not the same. Those are 2 completely different positions. And sometimes you go from the right side to the left side. And being able to shuffle that deck the way that the Stampeders have over the years, the way a lot of the teams in the CFL have, is just, it's amazing. It's so versatile in what these guys can do. Because, one of the biggest things when you get to camp is, you can play O-line. What else can you do? Can you, because the 40, they only have the 46-man roster. They only have so many guys that can dress. They have to play a lot of special teams. They need you to be involved in some other aspect of the game, whether that's, being able to snap, play center, being able to play guard or tackle. You got to be as versatile as you can. And I mean, these are some big humans being versatile and knowing all the different aspects of the offensive line, knowing what all 5 positions can do at any time because somebody gets hurt, somebody gets rolled up on. We're shuffling that deck and moving guys in different spots. And now the person beside you is going to change and there's going to be a lot going on.
It's why Bryce Bell currently is the number 6 guy on the Stampeders, and it's one of those things where like I've always like, used to be Spencer Wilson back in the day. It's like that 6th guy. It's like we should talk about as a starter because they are the guy who literally has to be able to play everywhere on the O-line.
That guy's getting the biggest mental workout of the week of anybody because he's got to know 5 different positions, and they even often use those guys in like goal line. They use them on special teams. Sometimes, so they had Spencer. Spencer returned a couple of kicks. They didn't want him to return kicks. They kicked the ball to him. He picked it up and ran it. And they had some different things that were happening throughout the seasons. Yeah,
that's amazing. I will say that you mentioned the guys leaving. I do think one of the biggest guys leaving in the offseason was Jameer Thurman, and I don't know. I can't speak to what's going on in the locker room, but I gotta say Mike Holloway at linebacker doesn't feel like they're missing a step there. I mean, sack, interception, he was everywhere.
He had a great game too, that's for sure. I mean, in game 1, I thought that he played well. I didn't really notice him. I was expecting him to have a bigger game. Game 2, I mean, that middle linebacker spot, you want a guy that's going to take charge of that defense and make a big play and stand up, and the other guys will follow around him. And I think that he can be one of those guys that has that and leads by example. And I think he did that in game 2.
Yeah, that combination with him and Judge, like I don't know, it was one of the things everyone, including myself, talks about in the offseason. And then you look back and you're like, since Singleton left, it's like they've had a different middle linebacker pretty much every year. If you go back to it, I mean, you'd have had Winton McManus there. You've had Corey Greenwood there. You had Darnell Sankey there. Then you had Jameer, who was a weak side linebacker prior to last year. So, This is pretty much your 5th starting middle linebacker in 5 seasons. And we haven't really, that just hasn't been a problem position for this organization.
No, I mean, I think they're a well-coached group. I mean, I think that Brett Munson will be a future CFL head coach here in the future, and he's had that defense playing at a high level for a long time. And the guys know what to do when they're in there. They know what they're expected of them. And, that middle linebacker is the quarterback of the defense. He's often, calling audibles, getting people lined up, getting them in the right positions. And I think the Stampeders have done that at a high level for a long time.
Okay, so the last one on the defense. I don't think it's panic time yet. That's like way an exaggeration, but are you at all concerned with the defensive end positions? I mean, we haven't seen a sack yet. I don't know that we've really seen Hauser or James Waters like really impose themselves on the game.
I mean, I wouldn't say concern is the right word. I mean, I think things got to go the right direction here soon for sure. It's a long CFL season. There's 18 games. I mean, sometimes it takes some guys a little bit to kind of catch their stride. We talked about camp not being as long as it was because they missed a few camp days due to smoke and things like that, things outside of their control. And I think that as the season progresses here, I mean, that's the way the professional football works. It's a results now business. It's not a developmental league. They're not going to say, oh, this guy will come around in a year or two. If they're not producing, they're going to get new guys in there that are. And, I think that these are guys that played at a high level before. They obviously brought them into camp expecting big things from them, and I would expect that we're going to see some big things from them here in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I still, it's James Waters. There's been a lot of football coaches who have thought pretty highly of James Waters. I'm not worried. And then Hauser was an all-star last year. So, I don't actually have any concerns. And I think that, potentially Stamps fans have been a little spoiled over the years from that defensive end position. And last year, I was one of the people who didn't feel like Sean Lemon got the respect that he should have, even though he got the nomination. The fact that he's not in the league now sort of speaks volumes. And flow. And I think that last year that was a pretty amazing group. And then again, it's not like I'm looking in the defensive end, the defensive line, their job isn't only sacks, and I think that they've done well elsewhere. But it's one of those things. I think, part of our job is my job is not just to be positive, and you can't help but notice.
Right. I think Stampeders fans have been spoiled in a lot of different positions over the years, and a lot of winning at home over the years. And I mean, you look at how many guys in the last 10, 15 seasons since the John Huffnagel era came back. How many of those guys will end up in the Hall of Fame here in the future? And I mean, yeah, they played at a high level, and when we watch, we say, we saw Alex Singleton play at this level. We expect the next guy that they bring in to play at a similar level. And I mean, it's going to be hard to keep replacing that and keep doing that over the years. But, I think that we're going to see what happens here with this group. And if they're not able to, I'm sure the Stampeders coaches are great at identifying talent and bringing in new talent when needed. And we're going to see some new guys emerge here over the years.
And just before I move on from this game, Ottawa's sort of, I have trouble evaluating Ottawa because I expect Jeremiah Mazzoli back in the next week or two. And I do think that the quarterback play, it's hard to put too much on them, but I don't think that it was exceptional by any means against the Stampeders. And I do think Mazzoli, although it's been a while since we've seen him play a lot of football, but I do think you can just count on him making this team better. So it's a little hard to, throw them out and fully evaluate them when their starting quarterback's not available.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jeremiah Masoli's been around the league for a long time and played at a high level for a long time. And when he comes back, that's a whole new dynamic to the offense. A guy that can push the ball downfield when needed, can run when needed. And he's going to change that offense, because now every time that there's a pass rush, probably an extra, half second or so because he can escape. He can do things like that. Maybe he'll create an extra couple first downs with his legs, elongate some drives, and that's going to make a big difference for them throughout the season.
Perfect. We can't talk about Hamilton and Toronto because the game hasn't happened yet. Sort of sucks because honestly, I'm fascinated by that game because I don't know when the last time I've looked at a team like the Argos and been like, okay, you guys could be really good, but I have no idea what's happening with quarterback. There's just a lot that I don't know with them.
Yeah, that's a team that the quarterback play is. I don't know if it scares you or excites you. It's going to be something. It's going to be different. But that's a great example of what we were talking about earlier, where sometimes you don't need the quarterback to do too much because you got so much great talent around him.
Yep.
We know that Corey Mace is going to get that defense going. They played at a very high level last year. I think he got some new position players in there, like Flo that he wanted there for DN, and they got some great players, and they're going to be able to get off the quarterback. Sean Oakman's been playing at a high level in the middle there. He's a big guy, 6'9". A lot of the CFL quarterbacks are shorter. Mm-hmm. They're in that 6 foot range. You have a 6'9" guy putting his arms up in the middle of the formation. It becomes a problem. It's tough to get the ball around him. And, oh, by the way, he's going to track you down too. So, they have some great talented players there, and I'm excited to see what the Argos are able to do. And I was interested with what the Ticats did last week to create as many turnovers as they did against the Blue Bombers. That defense was playing pretty well too. Obviously, they got to slow down the points, but if you can create turnovers like that, you got a shot.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't sit here and say, oh, people should be patient with Jake or week 1 or 2, and not say the same thing about Bo. Like, I think he's going to be more accurate. And there was the one interception that everyone focuses on the sideline. I genuinely don't think he saw the guy. Like, I think I just don't think he saw the guy, and ultimately the play turned out badly. But I'm not writing off Hamilton just yet. I'll tell you that.
I'm fascinated with what happens with Bo because I think that we've seen in the CFL a few times over the years, whether it was Ricky Ray when he went to the Argos, everybody thought his career was over, and he played maybe some of his best football those last few years. And then the best example right now is, you look at Zach Claros. People thought his career was over when he went to the Bombers for what they traded him for. 4th round pick, just here, you guys can have him, whatever. And now a couple most outstanding players and a couple Grey Cups later. And, he's
arguably the greatest of his generation at this point.
Totally.
Right?
And he's turned that franchise. You talk about a franchise that's, selling whatever, 28, 30,000 tickets a game.
Yeah.
And, they're huge, big buzz in that city for that team. And it's been really great to see.
Yeah, I'm very interested. I think with Bo's one of those players where, because he's such a huge star, he is under a microscope. And I think, quarterbacks in the CFL are going to be under a microscope, but like week 1 has not traditionally been Bo's best week. So I'm just curious. I have a feeling he's going to bounce back pretty well. Now, does that mean I think he plays at an MOP level? I don't know that he has to. I think that Hamilton team is like, the defense should be a lot better than it was. And that's the thing. It's always hard because you're evaluating teams after week 1, and it's like, well, they played the Bombers. Like, what? As you said, the Bombers are such a finely tuned machine going into any game, but particularly at the beginning of the season. They have the veterans who understand the system, who can kind of hit the ground running. So I don't know that looking at Hamilton and drawing too many conclusions is smart.
Yeah, I think that we're going to learn a lot about them tonight when they play the Argos. We're going to learn a lot about both teams, and I'm excited for that matchup. It should be great.
Perfect. Well, man, that's it for me. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome. I really appreciate it, man. You're the best. And honestly, I've said this to many people, but having someone who, like, you're so open about it and just the way that you talk about offensive line play, I think that a lot of fans can learn a lot from. So I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you to John Bender, man, for dropping by here on Live from the 55. He is one of the smarter football minds I know. And eventually we're going to kind of get him on here and just have him actually just explaining offensive line stuff and stuff people don't understand about the CFL, because honestly, he's so smart and teaches so much. And, today we just kind of wanted to go over the games, and we're still trying to figure out what every team is, but I super do appreciate him. He's such a valuable asset to those of us who are trying to cover the game here in Calgary. Yeah, beyond that, yeah, we got a fun week coming up in the CFL. Obviously, the highlight is going to be the Lions and the Bombers playing on Thursday night. That's honestly has potential to be one of the more interesting games of the first half of the season. We're going to learn a lot about the Lions. They've looked really good through 2 weeks, and the Bombers have looked like the Bombers. So fascinated by that. You got the Alouettes and Ticats, which not whatever, but don't know what to expect from that game yet. Still got a lot to learn about both teams. And then we had a fun Saskatchewan Roughriders, Calgary Stampeders game on June 24th. That's always a big one here in Calgary. I'm looking forward to it. We're still, as I said, we can say this about all the teams. We're learning about everybody. But that's a big challenge for two teams that, they need wins. They need wins early in the season. And if they're going to keep pace with the Bombers and Lions, they need to beat each other. So, there's some stakes there. I'm looking forward to it. And then you got the Argos and Elks finishing it up, which whatever, I imagine the Argos are going to roll them, but maybe not. Surprise me, Edmonton, please. Anyways, before we take off, do you want to thank our sponsor, Fraser and Fig? As I've said, these guys do ready to go cheese and charcuterie boxes. They're curated with local and artisanal ingredients. They got 4 sizes every occasion. They come with meat, cheese, dried fruit, fresh fruit, nuts, olives, pickles, and carrots. And their selections vary month to month. Honestly, these guys are awesome. If you are having a house party or having family over, it's Father's Day today. It's probably too late. It is too late. This is going out on Monday. But they would have been perfect for Father's Day. So next year, but buy one of their charcuterie boxes before next year. They're good. They're really fun and have a great product, and we're super grateful for them. But beyond that, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. Tell your friends we're trying to build something here, and we appreciate it. So thank you. This is Live from the 55. I am Danny Austin, and we'll be talking soon. Cheers, guys.